Certainly the Ummah has just been through a great deal in the last 500 years, really. We just finished a book, Crusade and Jihad by Polk, which really highlights the just onslaught from the global north on the Muslim south. And there's just a great deal of hardship. This is a difficult time in many places, but it's also, despite all of the difficulties of whatever time we're in, it's our time. And we pass through very quickly. And the Prophet ﷺ reminded us that the person who suffered the most on the earth, that from the believers, when he's in paradise, he's actually asked, did you ever know any suffering? And he says, La wallah. Like it's just obliterated from his memory. And the one who had the most pleasure in the earth from the people of the Nar, he's asked if he ever knew any pleasure, and he says, no, he never did. So we're here for a short time. It's a very quick journey in some ways. In other ways, it's actually goes on for quite some time. I mean, we do have a lot of time. And if we use our time wisely, obviously we can derive great benefit from the time that Allah has allotted each one of us, because all of us have a certain amount of time, and none of us know. It's one of the mysteries of life, is that none of us knows when that time is. Each one of us, there's a door we're going to go through into an infinite world, from a finite world to an infinite world, and that door is somewhere in the world. لا تدري نفس بأي أرض تموت. We don't even know which place it will be on the earth. Allah can bring you to a place you never thought that you would be there, and that is the place where the angel of death was waiting for you. It's a very interesting story of appointment in Samara, which is about the man who's trying to flee from death, and he sees death in the marketplace, and he flees from that city to another city on the fastest horse he could find. When he gets to the city, there's the angel of death, and he said, I was wondering why you were in that city. We had an appointment in this city. And you know, the story is just about that you can't avoid your fates wherever you're meant to be when that time comes. And the best state to be in is a state where you're one, at peace with your Lord, but also at peace with yourself, because people are conflicted, and the Quran talks about people fi izzatin wa shiqaq, you know, that they're in this puffed up, but also there's a type of shiqaq, which isn't just the dissension amongst ourselves, but also internally, that people have struggled with themselves internally. They fight with their voices they hear. So these are all the struggles of the human condition. But the Quran for us is this yearly reminder, just as the prayers are daily reminders. The Jummah is a weekly reminder. And then these new moons are monthly reminders. And then the Ramadan is the yearly reminder. And the Hajj is the reminder for your lifetime. And one of the most amazing things about this religion is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who created us, knows the human condition and the nature of the human being, humans always want new things. Probably some of the best things that are on the internet are very old things, but people don't want old things. They want new things. They want the latest thing. They're always looking for something new, new and improved. Something's going to be better. But the reality of it is that the truest things are the things that have been around for the longest time. وَمَا يَنْفَعُ النَّاسَ فَيَمْكُثُ فِي الْأَرْضِ. What benefits people remains in the earth. But people want new things, and so they get bored very quickly. What the Arabs call malal. You know, they get bored. And Allah says, the Prophet told us that Allah la yamallu hatta tamallu. Allah does not weary of giving you reward until you weary of doing whatever you're doing that's good. And obviously it's for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it doesn't mean it literally. So nawwa' al-ibadah, he made all these different types of ibadah. There's all these different ways that you can get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so that you don't weary of doing the same thing over and over again. Just even in the day, there's all these different things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given. The Prophet ﷺ said just a smile is sadaqah. So just smiling at a person is sadaqah. And visiting widows and orphans, taking care of orphans, people that have money that are able to spend it on positive projects. All of these things are just amazing gifts. But one of the great gifts of this religion is Ramadan. And in many ways, Ramadan has been corrupted because it was a time that was meant for people to experience hunger to a certain degree, just to feel hungry, and also to have some time in the night to get used to this idea of night worship, because it's a very important aspect of the religion for people that really want to get close to Allah. But now the consumption of food is much greater now, and people actually get sick during Ramadan. I was speaking to one of the Mauritanian ulama 2 days ago, and he was telling me how different it was Ramadan to what the Ramadan that he grew up with, because he said, we ate very little in Ramadan, and he said now there's like feasting, and he said, and then they've turned the night into the day and the day into the night, so people sleep during the day, and then they stay up all night. So many of these things are actually antithetical to the actual purpose of Ramadan. It's definitely there to disrupt patterns, but it's not there to invert the day and the night, so that you're just eating during the night and then not eating during the day, as opposed to eating during the day and not eating during the night, which is what happens when we're in our regular period of time. So, but the other really important thing of Ramadan is it's almost like you can see it like continuing education that they have for people in professions. They have to go like every year, and they have to renew their skill sets. They have to learn new things. So it's very important to be reminded that we have to go back to this book. And then hopefully, one of these Ramadans, there will be a shift. And it continues after Ramadan. Because a lot of people, once Ramadan's over, they go back to their old habits. They don't read the Quran like they were during Ramadan. They don't do the night prayers like they were doing during Ramadan. Whereas Ramadan is that reminder and call back to it. And one of the most important things in our religion is a commitment to the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet ﷺ said that he was, umirtu an akuna min al-muslimin wa an atlu al-Quran, like I was commanded to be from among the Muslims, but also to recite the Quran, which also means to follow the Quran. And this is one of the beauties of Arabic, is tilawa means both recitation, but it also means to follow. So talaha, to follow it. So yatlu al-Quran means to follow the Quran, but it also means to recite the Quran. And part of the secret of reciting the Quran and studying the Quran is that it will keep you in a vigilant state, because it is a dhikr. It's a dhikr al-hakim. It's the wise reminder. So it's always reminding you. And one of the most interesting the Prophet ﷺ recited Qaf constantly. And it made me think a lot about the secret, like what are the secrets that are in this book that would have him reciting it constantly. There's one of the women, Hisham bint al-Haritha, she shared an oven with the Prophet, because they had communal ovens, and so the tanur, they would go and they bake the whatever they were baking. and the bread. And she had a communal oven with the Prophet, so she saw the Prophet a lot. But she said that she memorized, she said, أَخَذْتُ قَافْ مِن لِسَانِ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ. I took the qaf from the Prophet because he recited it so often. So she actually memorized it from just hearing the Prophet ﷺ. It's the only surah that we know that he actually gave a khutbah with qaf. And in one riwayat it says many times. Like he would often use qaf as the source of his khutbah. And one of the tragedies of modern khutbahs is traditionally the khutbah was focused on the Quran, on an ayah or on a hadith or on some theme inside, like sabr or sadaqah or something. And if you look at all the traditional khutbahs of the Muslim world, and we have many books of khutbahs, but we also have the khutbahs that were recorded of the Prophet ﷺ. You won't find any political khutbahs. You just won't find any, I guarantee you. Just look, try to find talking about whatever the problems of the time were. The khutbah was always to try to call people back to their Lord. Partly because the ulama understood that the reason there was so much social unrest is that people weren't connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if they wanted to really get over the social unrest, they had to come back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because a lot of what happens to us in the world is a direct result of our actions and our behavior. These are the tabi'at, the consequences of living sinful lives, being far from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if you look at the khutbahs of the Prophet ﷺ, it was all wow. He was reminding them, calling them back to Allah. And that's this chapter in the Quran, which is the 50th chapter of the Quran. It's one of those chapters that it's very, if you really study it and read it a lot, and one of the great gifts of reading the Quran continuously, especially these surah that we read on a regular basis, like Yasin or Al-Waqi'ah or Surah Al-Mulk. If you really pay attention, you will continue to see things in them. I mean, one of my favorite stories is from Shaykh Ahmed Dugan, who was a great scholar from Al-Ahsa, Jawatha in Arabia, in the eastern province. And he was a really brilliant scholar, but he was a great faradi. And he taught for about 70 years or even more. He taught the Rahbiyya, and he taught the books on Ilm al-Fara'id, Tariqat, which the Prophet said was the first knowledge that would be lost. That was the first outward knowledge. There's another hadith, the first inward knowledge was khushu', which is this kind of awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But his son told me that one day he came out of his room and he just said, Bab as-Sudus ajaib, Bab as-Sudus ajaib. And he's had some kind of opening about, I mean, Bab as-Sudus is a very interesting bab because there's a lot of situations where people get a sixth in inheritance. But he was seeing something, and we have books written on the inner meanings of all of these acts of worship. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put this between al-Hujurat and the Dhariyat. So the Hujurat is a very interesting chapter because it's really about adab and how, in fact, it's called the Hujurat, which are the places where the Prophet ﷺ lived, which is the real adab is inside the home, because people often have decorum outside the home, but how they behave inside the home reveals who they really are. And the Prophet ﷺ was a completely open book. We know everything about the Prophet. We know how he showered. We know everything about the Prophet ﷺ. He lived a life without there's no shadow. There's no hidden self. We know exactly how he lived.